Hello. Welcome. Welcome to this live. In Soul Reflections Iboga.
Hey,
Hello.
How are you?
Doing good, staying warm. It's like 30 degrees in Texas right now, which feels very cold.
you're at the same temperature we are right now.
Oh
Um,
Yeah.
gosh. Well, first off, welcome to our shared live. I wanted to put this together to be a space of education and also inspiration for people because a lot of people don't know about Iboga, the spirit of Iboga, and many also know of plant medicines as a drug, which is, as we know, very different.
Mhm.
So I'd love to invite both of you to share a little bit about who you are and what you've been doing and kind of how you came into this space as expert facilitators of Iboga.
mhm.
Okay, well, um, I'll start. Let's see. Michelle has been an acute care nurse for like 17 years, and in all the different settings of the hospital. I was 30 years, I'm just retired and working in critical care with ICU and emergency departments. Um, and, you know, it was really hard to our cats joining us. It was really hard to get a whole total um, remedy for people when they're coming in because to help them through things it was really difficult because we were very boxed in by what we could do. And then I began to cross my path 12 and a half years ago when they asked me, they were starting up a center and asked me to be the medical person. And so I said yes. And we started with addictions using a little bit of the total alkaloids, which is the whole component of Iboga with it. And we saw amazing, amazing, amazing potential, amazing results. And then a couple of years into it, I was asked to oversee a traditional Iboga retreat. And it was just night and day. It was just, you, instead of just buying the chicken nuggets, you got the whole happy meal, and that's, oh, hello. And that's how I saw it, as it's everything, because it's, ibogaine one alkaloid, and iboga, the plant, has like over 100 alkaloids, and they all do something, you know? And so that's where I saw the real beneficial to getting to the root, the deep healing below the addictions, below the behavioral maladaptions that we have, or the negative self-talk, or the negative self-biases and things like that, getting to the root. So we became students of the medicine, searching, learning tons and tons. We've gone to Gabon, Africa. This would be our fourth year going with some intensive initiations and training and such like that.
Can I add in here too that a lot of people know of Iboga's ibogaine as addiction therapy, and while that is true,
Mhm.
there's such a wide array of addiction, right? Like there's an addiction to suffering.
Mm.
There's an addiction to a false illusory identity that we have.
Mhm.
It's not just addiction to substances.
No.
So that's a really important piece too that I've experienced with Iboga, that
Mhm.
I didn't realize that I was so addicted to my thoughts and really believing, and Iboga, through the initiation and through sitting with this sacred tree of life, it helped me understand the root
Mhm.
of my addiction, which ultimately is where our deep healing occurs, is at the root, so we can pull it up.
Yeah. I
Exactly.
mean, don't anyone jump off this call right now, but there's also the addiction to social media. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's so many, it comes in so many forms.
Yeah. Yeah. Addiction is just a need to heal something. It's a need to cope or to find a tool to help. We often stigmatize addiction because we think of it as what we think of as the end result, right? Of somebody who's deep in addiction, and so manipulative, and doing whatever they need to do to cope with their everyday life. And we forget that that's not that person. Those are just behaviors of somebody who's like in a lot of pain and suffering, and we all do it just on different levels. You know,
Mhm.
maybe, yeah, I manipulate my morning so I can sit and go watch a few more Instagram reels, right? When I could be doing something far more productive. But I'm aware of that. And I
Mhm.
think that's another thing that Iboga really helps us hone in on, is just bringing awareness to
Yeah.
to our mind and to our behaviors that are causing us harm or causing us not to be living our best life. And it's just, that's the beauty of the plant.
Yeah, and speaking to the plant too, the plant spirit will call you in. I mean, that for me is my experience with all plant medicines is when the time comes when you hear them knocking on your door.
Mhm.
And also another a way in which you know that the medicine is coming towards you is usually when you feel fear, because that thing in you that doesn't want to decompose is what is scared. And those are like attachments,
Mhm.
it can be attachments of the addiction or the symptom, or it can be attachments to an old life when this new one is calling you forward.
Mhm.
And so for those that don't know, Iboga is the sacred tree of life, from the Gabonese perspective and that region of the world. And it's the root and the bark. And it has how many alkaloids?
Over 100.
Over 100 alkaloids,
And there's been
which
about
is
16 that have been studied. Only 16 that have been studied so far.
so incredible. So incredible. And yeah, so it's the medicine is not only healing the mind, which is a big part of it, but it's also healing your body. It's healing your cells, your DNA. In my experience, it's waking up a part of you, a deep, deep soul part of you, which is why we call this 8-day retreat that we're working together on supporting awakening the blueprint, because Evoke goes into your system and it awakens some piece of you that has been dormant and is willing and wanting and knocking on the door of your soul and your heart to say, wake up, this is why we came here. It's such a powerful realignment medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So I have first I want to introduce Katie as well. Katie is also one of our expert facilitators. She's been working with Ibogaine for a long, long time, working in the space of trauma and therapy and moving into deep soul embodiment. So thank you, Katie, for coming here. She also is currently in California being evacuated from her home because of the fires. So just wanting to put a little seed of awareness in here too, that I'm sorry that this is happening to you and so many people, and thank you for showing up for this call.
Yeah, the winds have died down and they were able to get the fire that was just down the street under control. But we have a couple other ones in the area that have popped up, so there's quite a few people who are displaced right now. For now, we're safe, thank goodness, but there's a lot of people who are not home and don't know what's happening. So if we can just light a candle, lift them up in prayer, that would really mean a lot, I think, for our community.
Yeah.
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 We have a question on here. What is an alkaloid and why is that good? Can any of you answer that?
I'll answer if no one else wants to. An alkaloid. So it's like an element. A bunch of elements make up a whole. And so that's what they are. They're just components of this plant. And they all do things. Ibogaine is the biggest one for addiction interruption. It's a huge one. Like it's a big component, but there's other ones in there. It's been shown to have really good efficacy for Parkinson's disease and to treat that, you know. And I remember talking with Dennis McKenna years ago about the possibility that it looks like one of these alkaloids could be responsible for helping heal and remedy multiple sclerosis. And now there's been some case studies that have just come out, and it's like, well, it's about time, you know. really, so that's all it is. And so they're good things. They're necessary things to have in there, the components that make up the building blocks of the plant.
Yeah, the
And
active ingredients.
the active ingredients.
Yeah.
And then on top of it all is the spirit of Iboga. And that's
Mm-hmm.
So,
everything.
so
Mm-hmm.
ibogaine is the name of one of the alkaloids.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then someone Gal Galavan said no, iboga is a root bark that contains alkaloids.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Glad I'm on the same page. So when someone experiences iboga in one of the 1500 ceremonies that you have facilitated, what is that experience like for people? And I know that it's different for every single person because we're all unique, but is there a certain experience that most people have so our listeners can understand what this medicine does and works with us on?
That's like really hard to answer. So the experience can be visual, it cannot be visual, it can be auditory, it cannot be auditory. Sometimes people experience like the most quiet, deep, like meditation that you know where their mind is just totally blank. You'll go over and you'll say, "Hey, how you doing? What's going on inside your mind?" And they're like, "Nothing. Nothing's happening. It's just dark." We're like, "Great." You know, like people study for 30, 40, 50 years, their whole lifetime to get to there. You know, and here you are just like floating around in that space. But that's probably the hardest space for people to be in. To be in a quiet mind is like very uncomfortable, and most people don't like it.
Mm.
They like want that part to be over.
Mm.
They want to go to like the visions and the light show and all that kind of stuff. But it's, and typically there's always a mind purge. There's always like a yoga cleaning the mind. And yeah, did you have something to
Yeah, I
add?
was going to mention with it is like she was saying, it's so it can be so different for everybody. And it's like that Rolling Stone song. You don't always get what you want, but you always get what you need. Always. And the one thing I will say unequivocally is the truth. After all the 1500 plus ceremonies and people coming through of all types, Iboga always shows up. It always shows up. It always does what it's supposed to do. Always, 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 always. So I can say unequivocally, Iboga works every time. Every time. Then it's up to you. See? Like when you consume the medicine and you take the Iboga, I mean, that's when the magic happens. That, if you want to call it that, that's when the magic happens. That's when you can get a deeper connection to self, to spirit, to source. That's the magic. But when you leave that ceremony and go back home, if you don't integrate properly, well, it was no more than just another magic trick, right?
Mhm.
Because it's up to you to show up to do your part with your healing. Iboga is a great tool, it's a great source to connect us. We all have all the answers in us already, right here. So when people say, "Oh, I just feel broken, or I'm not enough," no, you are enough. But you might need help tapping into where you need to see this, or how to heal, or to get through. So every time it shows up and it swings a home run. It's up to us to run the bases.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of a saying, that the medicine will only meet you halfway. And this is actually a very deep truth about life in general, but I'll just be using it from the context of this space in medicine is, you the way that creation and God and these plants seem to work, in my opinion, is in a way neutrality. And that's what truth feels to me as well. And so you have to have the courage to enter into the truth, the truth of who you are, the truth of what you've accumulated, and the truth of who you want to continue to become. And the thing about becoming too is it's really just revealing who you already are. And that's the power of this medicine for me, is it just peels back the layers to really show what your essence actually has always been. There's just been distortions and distractions and a little bit of like murky water, but it gets you really clear. And then it's up to you to continue walking in that clarity. And life will always present you with choices, right? I feel that the universal coding is in binary of zeros and ones, yeses and nos, and you make the decision of how you want your life to be. And these medicines will support you in that to help you get clear of where you're making your choices from. So the example that I could give here too from a personal note is I really struggled with choices. As the three of you know, we all went to Gabon together, and Katie and I are spiritual twins and got traditionally initiated into Bwiti. And Patrick and Michelle are our spiritual parents. They were ahead of us in that way a few years. And what was presented to me were choices because I struggled with that. I was paralyzed by them. I was trapped in this sense of morality of what is the best choice, and fear that if I made the wrong choice, that I would deeply suffer. But it was like, I like to explain it kind of like one of those old Macintosh computers, and it would just spin and spin and spin. That's what happens when you don't make choices. You spin and you spiral. And the first 9 hours of my Iboga experience was exactly that. And it was intense, and it was, I was suffering. But what the medicine was doing was not making me suffer. It was showing me that I was already suffering. And the best thing that I could do to release that from myself is to simply make a choice and to know that there's no wrong choice. There's just learning choices. And this
Blessing.
little, seemingly little thing catapulted me into realignment with my entire purpose in my life. And that's the greatest gift of all, is just to realign into what you really came here to do. And this is why I stand with this medicine and with the three of you too, because I want people to be able to experience this realignment. And sure, you may not need Iboga, you may not need plant medicines, but my God, it really helps. It's like a fast track, to get you back into your center and to know clearly who you are, so you know what you came here to do. And healing is the revealing of who you are. And that for me is really the medicine of our time, is just to get to know who you are intimately, on like the soul level, so you can see how beautiful you are and how much you have to offer. And the medicine of gentleness, and the medicine of gentleness is also often found through challenges and difficulty, because it softens you, it polishes you like a stone. Which leads me into a question for you, Katie. You have been working with complex trauma for over a decade, and I would love for you to chime in and help us understand what is complex trauma, because sometimes it feels like, oh, that person has had trauma because they've been on the ground in war, but also there's war inside of us. The trauma is so nuanced. So I would love for you to help us understand what is complex trauma and what has your role been in helping people unfurl.
Yeah, unfurl. I love that. It's one of my favorite words. It's so great. Yeah, so complex trauma it's a multi-layered trauma that typically complex trauma begins in childhood. So we always think that trauma is what was done to us or what we experienced, but trauma is oftentimes what we did not experience as well. So sometimes our trauma is not having unconditional love or having acceptance from our primary caregivers, or just not having our needs met. But over time, what happens is that it creates these behavioral patterns and these stories that are untrue to our essential being. And we adopt these coping mechanisms to help us move through the world in hopes to be unscathed, in hopes to not get further damaged or hurt. And so complex trauma begins to create a story around our being that oftentimes is not true. And what people will typically do is, because they begin to adopt behaviors and thoughts as ways to protect themselves, we end up shutting ourselves off to the world. We end up learning how to distrust ourselves. And the distrust of self is usually the number one biggest abandonment wound that we have. We always think abandonment from parents is, our number one, but when we walk away from ourselves as adults, we are pretty lost. And so this is one of the things that I love about these medicines is it's almost like dropping somebody into the pond of our being, and the medicine goes up and it starts churning the bottom of the pond, and pretty soon it's like the hood of the 1975 Chevy pops up and you're like, what the heck is that doing there? And then that old Coke bottle pops up, and we begin to see all of this debris that we've collected over our lifetime that has created the accumulation of our being, or our perception of our being. And I say awareness is a bitch, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but once we're aware, we're then responsible. So if I know that that hood is over there floating around, it's my responsibility to go in there and clear it off so that that part of the pond is unencumbered by, trash, or coping mechanisms or avoidance or whatever that happens to be. And the medicines map our bodies. We store trauma in our mind, in our body, in our soul, in our energy. These medicines are not just of the body. These medicines are mind, body, spirit, subtle energy. It's all of those things combined. And these medicines come in and they help to kind of map our being. And then it's almost like they open up this proverbial drawer, and it's like, this pair of pants you've been wearing since you're 3, you don't need those, right? So, like, here's the lie of trauma, get rid of that. Here's the lie of trauma, get rid of that. And it can be an uncomfortable position because all of the sudden our being, what we know of our being, our perception of who we are, isn't as heavy. It feels kind of naked. It feels kind of vulnerable. But that is the blank canvas from which we get to then construct who we truly are without all of those other stories. And that's really where the work begins. I would love it if these medicines were a panacea and we could take them and, they just automatically shift our whole life and they make choices for us and they
No.
drive the car so that we never go down the wrong road, but they don't do that. They give us choice. And I think that that is the beauty of all of this, because when we have choice to do something and we're not operating from a subconscious shadow perspective, we're then engaging in life in a very different way than what our trauma has caused us to do. So, long-winded answer, but complex trauma is usually multi-layered trauma, versus like a single incident trauma, which, can have profound impacts on people as well, and can really shift and shape the way that they move around in the world. But typically, when trauma begins from a very, very early age and it's pre-verbal, it has a very different effect on us. And this is one of the things that I really love about the medicine, especially when we're looking at trauma that happens pre-verbally, is these medicines work off of the parts of the brain that are pre-verbal parts of the brain, like the cerebellum and the amygdala. And so, they change the structure of the way that our neurology is so that we can kind of shake some of that out. So we don't necessarily need to know what happened to us. Sometimes the medicine knows that and is like, you don't need to understand that. All you need to know is that we're going to change your neurology up here and in here. We're going to change your gut, flora and fauna, and we're going to like get that okay so that the body can operate from a very normal standpoint. Because a lot of what's happening in the body is the most pain is pain. And so our pain and our thoughts and our behaviors are neurologically wired. And so the medicine can kind of go in there and just be like, what if we take a left instead of a right, and we would just repattern this, and we lower your inflammation so that we're not stuck in this position of being chronically inflamed and not being able to nourish our body, therefore not nourishing our mind, therefore not nourishing our spirit.
Thank you for that. It reminds me kind of how when people have asked me what my experience with Iboga was like, I say the same thing every time. And it is Iboga is an advanced software that reads your body, scans your body, and then ejects malware. And that malware is this complex trauma because it's not actually who you are, it's what you've accumulated through your experiences.
Yeah.
And when we identify with trauma from a subconscious level, our original blueprint reveals itself. And what's so beautiful about our original blueprint is that that's what attracts our life experiences. You know, that's what our perception is looking out through. And when we can clear up and reveal our original soul blueprint, then we're bringing in experiences that are aligned with who we are and what we're capable of and what we came here to do. Um, and that's like the mirroring effect too, right? You know, like when I was clinging to suffering for most of my life, I unconsciously was creating experiences of suffering.
Hmm.
And that's what happens, you know? It's like, do. Oh, you want more suffering because that's what you're thinking? Perfect. Let me bring you more, you know? And it's that way until you learn and until you get closer to the seed of your soul where you're like, wait a minute, why am I creating this?
Yeah.
And why am I attaching to something that is bringing me pain?
Yeah.
And that's again what these medicines do is they reveal to us what we actually desire.
Yeah.
And I don't see desire as a negative thing, at least in like the deep soul sense. I feel that our desires are aligned with our gifts and what we came here to learn and what we came here to give. And the closer that we can all get to that, I feel that there will be more harmony collectively throughout our human species and then also on this planet. Because the animals and the plants and the elements, like they're good, you know, like they don't have this like mental distortion that is occurring. It's us. And we're the ones that are creating a lot of harm and we create a lot of beauty.
Yeah.
That's the duality of our experience. So my prayer is that we lean more towards the beauty of creation versus the annihilation of this beautiful planet.
Yeah.
And that brings me to my next question, which you touched on briefly, Michelle, which is the mind purge. And we spoke about this before of the mind purge is something that happens to everyone when they experience Iboga for the first time. And I would love for you to explain a little bit of what that is and what that is like so people can have an idea of it.
So a mind purge is like all the contents of your mind. Like Iboga loves, like it'll filter, just like filters through all the contents of our mind. And it's like, this file's not needed, that file's not needed, this one's. And so what people will experience are like, a lot of times people will say it's either like coming towards them and it's like images or thoughts or, but they can't grasp it, right? It's abstract and they can't, they're like, what was that? Oh, just, and then the next one comes, or sometimes it's like this way. Like, you know, and people are like, oh yeah, I keep like an image comes up and it disappears and I didn't get to examine it. And I don't know if it was important. We're like, no, 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 no. If it was important and you needed to understand it, then you would have, Iboga would have shown you in that way. So it's like, for those of us who are old enough, it's like, well, I guess it's like when we defragged our computers way back when, you know, your computer would get really slow because it had a bunch of useless files, or like when we erased the cookies, right?
Hmm.
And then so we erase the cookies and then our computer speeds up again because it doesn't have all these useless files clogging up the system. So that's what the mind purge is like. And then after, people feel like, oh, like there's so much space and they're so excited. But I also wanted to speak to the blueprint when you guys were talking about trauma and the blueprint, and when we remove things from like stories, an attachment to a story or attachment to a belief system, and then we go home and we feel really great. Sometimes people then start feeling not so great, and they don't know why. They're like, "What's wrong? I don't feel. I thought I was going to have this Iboga afterglow, and I was going to feel amazing." But then, what's happening is they're not making the. See, you become aware. We go back to what Katie says. You become aware, and now that you're aware, if you're not sinking into those or aligning with your soul, it becomes very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so that's an important time to listen. Like, why am I so uncomfortable right now? What am I doing that's not in alignment with what I know the truth to be now that I've seen it? Right? So we can't ignore it. We can't like go to a retreat and do all this stuff with the medicine, and the medicine give us these beautiful insights, and then just go home and go right back to our regular life and think we're not going to notice the difference. We do, and we need to make sure we're willing to put that work in. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no going back
No.
after a holy and profound experience like this, which also is actually important to say because when you sign up for something like this, you have to know that your life will never be the same, and that's not a bad thing.
It's a good thing.
You know, it's a really wonderful aspect of existence that we can have so many lives in one life. You know, if we don't like something, we can change it, and that's actually how I found my way to you. I mean, there are many ways that I found my way to you, and many unseen ancestors, but I was at a point where I didn't really like what was happening within my inner world, and I knew it, and I knew that I needed support. And then Iboga presented itself in a dream space, actually, and I knew that that was the way for me. And it may not be the way for everyone, but for me, it was so clear. Like, if you really want to change your inner world, which will change your outer world, or at least your perception of your outer world and how you relate, this is the way for you. And also, just nodding to what you shared just now, Michelle, about like, you think that you're going to have this Iboga glow. Well, I did for about a week. And then the deep integration work happened. And integration work, we all know that's the most important part about all of this, because it's the time where you start rooting down the new pieces of who you are. You know, you're going to be presented with old patterns and habits and behaviors and thoughts, and now you have the awareness to choose something else, and you have the awareness to decompose fully that piece, because again, the medicine is not just going to be like, okay, this is going to be gone, this is going to be gone. No, it's like, here's what this is, here's what this is. Do you want to change it? Here's your opportunity. And I want to share a brief story about that experience for me that Katie, actually all three of you really helped me out with when the Iboga afterglow stopped. And then I was presented with the deep beginning of integration work. I fell into victimhood and abandonment, which were the two pieces that I knew were just like, they were my chains in the prison that I created. And it was really intense because I like efficiency. And so I choose very quick ways to just cut through things. And oftentimes that means it's like, whoa, And so there's this one night where I felt trapped in this like inner child, scared of everything, scared of the dark, didn't know what was happening. And at the same time, I had this little light of a witness within me telling me, this is a form of intelligence. Allow this process to move through you. Don't identify with it, but don't disassociate from it. And that's a really fine line. And that takes a lot of practice and a lot of wisdom to walk. But we all have that ability to strengthen that tool. And so when I was in that space, I called Katie and she just talked to me, you know, and then you two the next day picked up the phone right away. And that this is my favorite part about plant medicines, to be honest with you, is that when you initiate yourself into this way of life and you choose to really evolve and decompose simultaneously, you're presented with a family and you're presented with community and like-minded individuals that will walk alongside you and not stand in front of you trying to prevent your suffering and your lessons and your learning, not stand behind you because they're scared of these profound experiences that you're having. No, you're flanked by beautiful souls that are walking towards the most beautiful future that we can all have together. And that for me is true co-creation, and that is something that I want to be a part of.
Awesome.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
the tradition we have that we've been initiated into working with Iboga is the Bwiti. And quite simply, that means it's the study of life, the study of your life and my life. And that's what we're here for, is to study our life, is to find our purpose, to find our connection to self, to soul, you know, to be realigned, to be our very best version of us. So when you're saying, you know, you're having this experience, you're changed forever in a positive way. You don't change and, oh, who is that person? I don't recognize. No, you lose, you shed stuff that of these stories, and you start to shine of who you are, you know. And the more you shine means there's more light, the more obstacles you see that are there. So it can look like it's really hard all of a sudden, you know, and that iboga, the glow is gone. It's like, but really, is it? You just can see more. And that's where the integration is so important. That's where 95% of everything happens. That solidifies the magic of the ceremonies. And I hate using the word magic, but it gives us a good context of, you know, of that.
It's a little bit
It is like
It's
magic.
totally like,
like
Yeah.
Well, and I think about, what you were saying around how important, family is, community, and many of us have many of us who are in this work have been born into families that, we may not have chosen. Like in our adulthood, we wouldn't look back and go, yes, I want that person as my mother or my father or whatever. But this community it's a chosen family, which is so very different because separateness is separateness to our soul is it is traumatic. It is traumatic. And I think about even as we were down in Africa being initiated, just how critical community was and how each and every person within that community had their own role and job. And Marissa, you and we got to learn what our role and our position was within that same community as well, because everybody plays a part, and because everybody's playing a part, we all have a part of the whole. We're not apart from, we're a part of.
mhm.
And this is something that I really love about Patrick and Michelle, and what you're creating with your community is just this really precious belonging and access to each other and to wisdom and to preparation and integration, which with this medicine is so important, because this medicine is about truth and balance and life and the lessons of life. And there's no better way than to learn that with community. I mean, back in the day, we used to gather around a fire and we would tell stories and we would eat and we would cook, and we would talk about, like, where was the tiger that day? We would protect one another. We'd say, oh, so and so is really in need of help. How can we show up for this person? And that's part of what's happening with this community. And I think that that's a really important aspect to talk about in here, is that when we go through these experiences, we're not meant to do it alone. I mean, even I think about, like, these medicines and how at one point, we had Pangea and all of the continents were all snuggled up together, which means that beautiful mycelium network was, from edge to edge. And all of these beautiful medicines that we sit with, they knew each other. There was no separateness in the beginning. And then as time went on, there became separateness. And then the fighting started and the war started. And like there's an aspect of doing this work that begins to heal some of that, both internally and as a community. And so, like, these are important aspects of doing the work, is to stay tied to your community and ensure that, you know, you're showing up for you, but you're showing up for other people, because then other people can show up for you when you need it if you can't see it, you know. So there's like an accountability factor that's really beautiful in this medicine as well, because this medicine is about community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an important part um, of healing that I want to speak to. You heal yourself for you, but you also heal yourself for your family and your community and the collective and humanity and the land and the creepy crawlies and the winged ones and the four-legged and the two-legged. Because when we're in our healing process, that really just means that we're more loving, you know, more centered, more truthful, more in integrity. And that benefits and ripples out, I mean, far more than just the visible and the seen. It goes into the invisible. And some people are aware of ancestral healing. Well, also there's descendant healing, because what we're doing to our bodies, healing our bodies, that's helping our children and our children's children, because women carry their grandchildren in their wombs. So the more healing work that I do, the more healing my future lineage will be able to experience. And with prayer, I think that all of us that are doing this healing work right now is to benefit those lineages, you know, so that they have a little bit of an easier time than we did. So they don't have to go through the ringer of forgetting who they are so completely, to then just having to remember it all over again. And that's what
Yeah.
so many indigenous cultures are so immaculate about with their storytelling and with their community, is that you don't fully forget who you are, because the whole community knows who you are from birth. And at least in the Dagara culture, they know who you are before you even came to the earth. There's a ritual in which the Dagara people bring the pregnant women into a trance and communicate with the baby in womb and ask, who are you? Why are you coming here? And how can we help you? Ugh, imagine if we had that ritual now, how much easier it would be, you know. And there's levels of grief to remembering. There really is, because we've gone so far away from the true essence of what it means to be a human being and not a human doing.
Hmm.
And yet grief is a sister of love, as Francis Weller says. So the more that we can actually feel that grief in our remembering, the more capacity we have to experience and hold and offer love.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
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 Speaking of love, I also
I
want
wanted
to,
to mention what you're
yes,
saying, because it's so exciting with, you know, the topic you're talking about right now. And it's like you can actually, with this medicine, go back and heal your ancestral trauma. You're holding it all the way back. You can heal. There's things in our DNA that have been passed down, that, you know, create us and all the things we're dealing with. So you can go back and create it. But like you were also mentioning about your, you know, carrying the eggs in yourself and such, you know, you can become that ancestor who heals your whole lineage. I mean, that's
yeah,
powerful. You know, you can be that person, and and that can be for everybody.
yeah,
You know, powerful. So I
Hmm.
just love what you're saying on that.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. It's beautiful work, and what I just wanted to touch on is to just drop back into this 8-day experience that we are
Mhm.
offering whoever feels this call and whoever is getting that knock on their soul's window from Iboga, and really radically changing their life for the better and for our future, our collective future. I want to note, in case the viewers don't know who you are, that Katie is, I've had the honor of watching her work, and she truly is one of the most compassionate beings that I've ever met. And watching her hold like grown men going through a deep process, it brings me to tears, because it's like that's actually what a healer does. You know, most healers, true healers, have been through such deep pain and difficult experiences, and then they move through it so they can offer their hand back. And that's the type of person that I would want to sit in a medicine ceremony with. And that's the type of person that I would feel safe with, because I knew and know that they had been through something as well. So they're proficient in it. You know, that's really important for people who are choosing any medicine ceremony. Make sure the healer, the facilitator, the shaman is proficient in suffering, in healing, in celebration, in whatever you want to call more into your life. That is such an important way to hone in your level of discernment. And then I want to speak also to Patrick and Michelle, who have had over a decade of experience with Iboga, 1,500 ceremonies offering this medicine, this holy medicine to people. And then between the two of you, 30 plus years of working in the Western nursing industry, you have such a vast array of knowledge and wisdom that you have gained through that much work. You've seen what works, what doesn't work. You've honed in on your level of compassion and offering. And Patrick is like this safe man who just, like, he's like a Viking, you know, like, you know, you're safe. Like, even if you have visions of like scary spirits or something, you're like, no, Patrick's got it. He's, you know. And then Michelle, her Bwiti name is the mother of twins. Like, for me, it's the mother of the
She
world.
is.
She has that quantum essence and energy where you also are safe and held in that feminine essence.
Yeah.
And so there's like a really beautiful space that is created between the four of us where we know how to hold everything. Like, there's
Yeah.
nothing that is too scary or too big or too small or too new. Like, we're able to hold all of the nuances. And that's why I'm so excited about offering this 8-day experience for people, because I know we can do it. I know we can hold it. There's history to prove it. And there's also this call right now showing like these beings are special. And I'm so excited for the souls that are going to say yes and choose to come
Yeah.
into this
Yeah.
space and radically change their life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the dates too are April 1st until April 8th. And we'll share the location for the people that show interest. We have an entire presentation manual of information for those that are curious. And so you can DM me or any of us, and we'll be happy to share that. We also offer discovery calls if you want to talk about it and see if this is the right fit for you. In fact, that's required. We do screening to make sure that you are the right fit for this medicine. The medicine is the right fit for you. And Patrick and Michelle, could you just briefly go over the sort of like, some people may have a question or inquiry about the safety of the medicine. And what's so great too about your experience of nursing is like you know actually how to provide that level of safety, not just for the mind but for the body too. So if you could speak on that.
So everything you've heard or read about the safety of Iboga, just put that aside. Iboga is safe. It's safe. Everyone's like, what? It's safe. It is safe. The human isn't necessarily safe. So Iboga on its own is very safe. What happens when you have, or you've heard about mishaps or different things happening, it's that human element of it where there's things overlooked in their screening. There was medications that were taken that were contraindicated. They weren't being watched for their intake and output, so you can have electrolyte imbalances and become confused and dehydrated. There's different things about pre-screening with all our labs that let us know about all of our systems and how we are, that our liver's working good and our kidneys are working well, everything. And then the EKG, and that lets us have a really good picture of your heart health and your heart health history and the potential of your heart health. So with those components, it's very safe. And we do have a strict pre-screening process that we go through to make sure, and we design it for each and every one. It's personalized because everyone is so individual. And there's a good way to come to medicine, and we ensure it, because one of our biggest things we want to give to people, one of our gifts, is we're going to help you come in such a beautiful way. You can come and just throw caution to the wind, go all in, and explore yourself and the healing you can do. And that's one of the biggest gifts we want to give. So, we're very, very, very cautious with the safety. We're always pre-screening. We're always watching. We're always looking for different things, from psychological to physical, nonstop.
Mhm.
And we do it with lots of love.
Yeah. So someone asked, where can I find information on the retreat to share with others? We have an email that we can send to people. So if you just reach out, then we can send you the email.
Yeah. And we also have it on both of our Instagram pages.
Yeah.
So I'll make sure to pin that. So it's the first post on my page. But you can look through both of our feeds, and what you'll find is Awakening the Blueprint, which is the name of the retreat. And then from there, you can DM us, and then we'll share information on the pre-screening, the deck that we share of all the information and all of that. So we'll have that on both of our feeds. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to Soul Reflections Iboga or my Instagram, Memories by Marissa, and we'll make sure to take care of you. Is
Yeah.
there anything that you two still feel in your heart that you want to express?
Just to remember, I think one of the things that people find, again, to talk about the things that maybe come up for people that are difficult, is we get lost in what we think the experience should be. And because Iboga has a reputation of being a certain type of medicine, it's long, it's like the grandfather or the father, and it's hard hitting and all this sort of stuff. People come and they have this expectation that they're going to get blasted off and they're going to, I don't know, see all sorts of crazy stuff, and
It's going to be really hard.
it's going to be really difficult. And when it's not that, there's like, well, I did it wrong, or there's disappointment. I didn't get to do this. I didn't get to do that. I wanted to, I just had I didn't see anything. And you forget that when you don't see anything, but your body is like purging, maybe you're really sweaty, maybe you're throwing up a lot, maybe you're going pee every 40 minutes, like that's things are happening there that you are not even aware of. And that gratitude for what's happening to the healing of your body. And like Katie said, we hold trauma in the body. So we need to allow for that space for the body to heal. Because this medicine isn't just about the visuals and going off into space and seeing purple unicorns. This medicine is about you. It's about your body, healing your mind, healing your body, and connecting you to your soul, right? And they're all connected in ways that most people don't even fully understand. And so we need to like allow that process and be thankful and grateful for the healing that the medicine does, even when we don't know what it's doing. Even when we're just like, I just sat there all night. Yeah, okay, you sat there all night because that's what you needed.
Yeah.
You needed maybe to sit with yourself. And what is the profound message in that?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you said, Marissa, it's the small, simple thing. Make a choice. Love yourself.
Yep, the biggest ripple effect.
It's Iboga is simple. It's powerful, but it's always simple in its messaging, and we can learn the hard way if we want. Or, we can allow the message to just come through in its beauty and simplicity and be grateful in everything we receive from the medicine and know that it is exactly what we need. Yeah.
Yeah, there's that phrase, give up your expectations and you'll receive everything that you need.
Yeah.
That's right.
And it's really like that.
Yeah, and we have to be careful because there's a bit of a consumerism, right? Because we pay for a retreat. And so sometimes we can get lost in that. But what we're paying for is time to experience ourselves.
Mhm.
That's what we're paying for. We're not paying for the, fancy food or although the fancy food is really good and I'm always so grateful for it. But you know what I mean? We're paying for that time to reflect, to learn, to understand, to challenge our beliefs. And those have nothing to do with consume. Those are 100% us. We're just providing that beautiful setting. That's what we do when we're talking about a retreat for medicine work. We're providing a beautiful, safe setting for you to go and do the digging in that beautiful work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to say, come do your healing. The four of us will look after you and hold you in a space that is perfect for you to do your work. Mhm.
Yeah, what I've noticed with plant medicines and people who are facilitating them, the deeper the relationship and reverence to the spirit of the plant, the easier the plant will manifest and support others. It's just been like what I've seen time and time again. If there's a extractiveness of the facilitator with the medicine, it's just a little bit more challenging for it to for him or her, this being to move. Even my experience with one of my teachers, Alejandrina, she's a Mazatec woman that works with psilocybin, and she gives people the smallest doses of medicine. And it feels like the biggest dose of medicine because her connection to that spirit amplifies. And then they work together. And that's the traditional way of working with medicine because you hollow yourself out enough for the spirit to move you and for you to have your antennas up to know where do I need to be, who needs support, who needs space, because it's no longer about you. And that's the greatest facilitator of all is when it's no longer about you.
Yeah.
It's about all of us.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to offering this space for people to see and know who they are on a deeper and deeper spiraling deeper level. And thank you so much for bringing me into and having this call with us. For me it was a really beautiful just poetic dance to talk about the beauty of earth and what this beautiful earth provides for all of us. There's poisons and there's medicines, and I'm really grateful that we get to work with medicine.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, Marisa.
that's awesome.
Okay, well, just one last time for anyone that's interested, Awakening the Blueprint will be on both of our Instagram feeds. And if you have any questions further than that, please DM us and we'll connect you via email and we'll start that conversation via our pre-screening call. So much love and stay warm and loved out there.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay,
And safe.
bye for now.
Aloha.
Mhm.